The prince arrived unannounced for dinner and was astonished by what the maid did with his children. Before I begin this beautiful period romance story, please respond in the comments section and tell me where you are listening to it from. I would love to know where you are joining me from. The rain pounded on the tin roof of the hallway as if in a hurry. In the kitchen, this sound was mixed with the bubbling of a small pot and the crackling of damp wood that was reluctant to catch fire. Rosa dried her hands on her apron. She turned to look at her children, who were sitting on a bench against the wall with their feet dangling. "Almost ready," she said softly, as if that would fool their hunger. The eldest, Tomas, did not respond. His gaze was fixed on the table, where a plate held 2 pieces of stale bread and a piece of cheese wrapped in a cloth. The girl, Lupita, hugged her stomach with both hands. Rosa felt that familiar pang in her chest. It was no surprise. It was a habit, and yet it still hurt just the same. "Mother," said Lupita in a thin voice, "it will be enough." "Yes, my dear," Rosa replied quickly. "It's always enough." Just then, the patio door creaked open. A male voice on the other side asked to speak to someone. It didn't sound bossy. It sounded tired. Rosa peeked through the crack in the door. She saw a soaked, hatless man with his hair plastered to his forehead. He was carrying a small suitcase. There were no bodyguards or servants with him, and he didn't have the confidence of those who command without speaking. Even so, there was something in his posture that suggested he found it difficult to ask for help. Behind him, the stable boy shrugged. "He says he needs dinner and shelter, Rosa," said the boy, scratching the back of his neck. "That's all for tonight." Rosa opened the door wider. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from trembling. The man blinked, with raindrops on his eyelashes. He smiled slightly, as if he knew he was making a bad impression. "My name is Joaquin," said the traveler. "My carriage broke down on the way. I'm not looking for trouble, just a place to dry off." Rosa looked at his suitcase, then his muddy boots, then his face. He didn't seem drunk or arrogant. He seemed genuinely tired. "What about the big house?" she asked. "That's where they receive visitors." Joaquin looked down, as if that were not an option. "I'd rather not draw attention to myself," he said. "If anyone asks, I'll say I took a wrong turn. If you let me eat something, I'll pay you back and leave before dawn." Rosa's first impulse was to refuse, not out of ill will, but out of fear. On a ranch, every decision came at a cost, and it was almost always the same people who paid it. But the rain continued to fall hard, and the children were there, listening. Tomas straightened up a little. Curious. Lupita opened her eyes. Rosa clutched her apron. "Come in," she said finally, curtly. "There are no luxuries here. Here, we eat what we have." Joaquin nodded seriously, as if he had just been given some important information. "That's enough," he replied. "Rosa." She led him into the kitchen. She pointed to a chair near the stove. "Sit there," she said. "Don't get too close. The fire sparks when the wood is wet." "Thank you," he said. Rosa took an old blanket and brought it to him. "You can dry off with this." Joaquin took it carefully, as if he didn't want to make it any dirtier. "Thank you," he said. Rosa went back to her routine because if she stopped, the lump in her throat would betray her. She stirred the pot. It contained watery beans and a little tomato. Nothing else. She turned the griddle. She cut the cheese into thin strips. The children didn't move, waiting for her signal. Rosa placed 3 clay jugs on the table, 1 in front of Joaquin and 2 in front of the children. She left hers aside as if it didn't exist. Joaquin looked around the kitchen, not with contempt but surprise, as if he had arrived somewhere he never imagined. "Is there no one else?" he asked. "The others eat in their places," Rosa replied without turning around. "We eat here." "And do you have dinner with them?" he asked, looking at the children. Rosa felt a twinge. It wasn't a bad question. It was a naive one. "When I can," she said. "Otherwise, they fall asleep on an empty stomach." Lupita lowered her head. Tomas pressed his lips together. Joaquin swallowed hard and remained silent. Rosa served the beans onto plates and placed the cheese on top as if it were a luxury. Then she took the 2 hard loaves of bread, brought them to the table, and broke them open without ceremony. However, she didn't break them in half, but instead broke them into 3 pieces. She put a large piece on Tomas's plate first, then another on Lupita's. She left the smallest piece on a separate plate. Joaquin stared at her wide-eyed. Ma'am, he began. I'm not a ma'am, Rosa interrupted him, not out of malice, but out of habit. I'm Rosa. Rosa, he repeated slowly. You're not going to eat. Rosa finally sat down without a plate in front of her. She brought the children's plates closer. Eat, she said, before it gets cold. Tomas looked at her. And you, she said, smoothing his wet hair from his forehead. I'll eat later, he said, smiling as if it were true. Lupita took the bread in both hands and bit into it carefully, as if she were afraid it would be taken away. Joaquin squeezed the blanket between his fingers. His voice came out low. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Rosa took a spoon and stirred the beans on Lupita's plate so that they would mix better with the cheese. If I were uncomfortable, she replied, I wouldn't be sitting here. Joaquin let out a short, joyless laugh. I've been welcomed in many ways, he said, but I didn't expect this. Rosa looked at him directly for the first time. She didn't hold his gaze challengingly. She held it as someone assessing danger. What did you expect? She asked. Joaquin opened his mouth and paused. He seemed to be searching for words that wouldn't offend her. A long table, he said finally. Extra plates and people smiling out of obligation. Rosa looked down at the bread. Well, there's none of that here, she said. Joaquin picked up the small jug of water, took a sip, and put it down carefully. And why are you serving it like this? He asked, pointing to the bread. Excuse me, I don't mean to pry, but... Rosa pressed her lips together. The question had touched a sore spot. Because they're my children, she said, as if that were enough. Yes, Joaquin said softly, but you're hungry too. Rosa let out a short breath through her nose, an exhalation that almost sounded like laughter, but wasn't. You get used to it, Tomas said. He stopped eating for a moment. Don't say that, he muttered, looking at his plate. Rosa touched his hand. Eat, she ordered tenderly. Don't get distracted. Joaquin watched her hand on Tomas's, a simple gesture, and yet it had a noticeable impact. In my house, he said without thinking much about it, there was always bread left over. Rosa looked up. Where is your house? Joaquin hesitated. In that silence, Rosa sensed a barrier. Far away, he replied. Rosa didn't press him. On the ranch, insisting meant getting involved in other people's problems, and those problems always ended up becoming your own. But Joaquin did insist on something else. Their father asked with a prudence that couldn't hide his curiosity. Rosa felt a sharp pain, as if someone had touched an open wound. Her back stiffened. Tomas lowered his face. Lupita stopped chewing. Rosa smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Eat, she said, pushing Joaquin's plate towards him. It's going to get cold. Joaquin understood instantly. He didn't ask again. He picked up his spoon. It's good, he said after tasting it. And he meant it. His eyes didn't lie. Rosa felt a strange warmth in her chest. It wasn't pride. It was surprise. It was as if for the first time someone wasn't mocking how little they had. It's all we have, she said. It's enough, he replied. The children ate slowly. Every bite seemed to count. Rosa watched them closely, and Joaquin noticed. It wasn't vigilance. It was care, as if the world could take them away if she blinked. Joaquin leaned in a little. What are your names? He asked the children in a different, lighter voice. Tomas looked at him sideways. Tomas, he said. Lupita, the girl added, without raising her voice much. Nice to meet you, said Joaquin. Do you like the rain? Tomas shrugged. When you're inside, he replied. Lupita perked up a little. When it's heavy, she said, you can't hear the house. Rosa swallowed hard. That phrase made her heart ache. The girl was speaking the truth without realizing it. Joaquin also remained still. What can't you hear? He asked carefully. Lupita looked at Rosa as if asking for permission. Rosa smiled quickly and shook her head. Come, she said. Joaquin got the signal. He didn't press the girl. Instead, turned around. He turned to Rosa. Forgive me if I'm being impertinent, he said. It's just that you're so good with them. Rosa let out a soft laugh. What else can I do? She asked. They're all I have. Joaquin opened his mouth and stopped. There was something he wanted to say, but he wasn't sure if it was appropriate. Along the way, he finally said, you see many things, but you almost never see this. This what? Rosa asked, even though she already knew. Joaquin looked at the bread, the plate, and Rosa's hands. Someone taking a bite out of someone else's bread, he said, without any dramatization. Rosa remained silent. The word dramatization caused her a twinge, as if that world of appearances were at the door. That's right. In the end here, you do what you can and no one thanks you, Joaquin said more as a statement than a question. Rosa looked at him. This time her gaze conveyed an old weariness. You don't do it for thanks, she said. You do it because if I don't, who will? Joaquin looked down as if that sentence had left him speechless. Outside, the rain continued to fall. The wind made the door vibrate. The kitchen smelled of firewood and beans. For a moment, Rosa felt that the world had shrunk to that table, but the hacienda didn't allow much breathing space. Footsteps were heard in the hallway, firm and confident, the footsteps of someone who didn't ask permission. Rosa stood up automatically. Her body moved before her mind could register it. Tomas gripped the edge of the bench. Who's coming? He murmured. Rosa didn't answer. Her throat tightened. Joaquin turned towards the door, frowning slightly. The door opened without being touched. Don Basilio entered. His coat was neatly arranged, as if the rain didn't bother him. His hair was combed back. Not a strand was out of place. He quickly scanned the kitchen, the pot, the table, the children, and then fixed his gaze on the man sitting down. For a moment, Don Basilio said nothing. He just looked as if he were sizing him up. Rosa felt the air grow heavy. Rosa, said Don Basilio finally, his voice too calm. What is this? Rosa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Joaquin barely stirred. Good evening, Joaquin said politely. I just asked for a little food and shelter. I didn't mean to. Don Basilio raised a hand without looking at him, as if politeness were not an issue here. I'll take care of it, he said, keeping his eyes on Joaquin. Rosa felt the children clinging to her skirt. She put a hand over their heads to protect them, but not too tightly in case Don Basilio noticed their fear. Don Basilio slowed his pace, and then his expression changed. It wasn't complete surprise. It was recognition. As if a piece had fallen into place where it shouldn't have. Joaquin held his gaze calmly, but his jaw tensed. Rosa noticed this small gesture, and it frightened her even more. Where did you say you came from? Don Basilio asked, his courtesy false. From the road, Joaquin replied, not playing along. Don Basilio smiled slightly. It was a cold smile. Of course, he said. From the road. Rosa felt her heart pounding. Tomas clenched his teeth. Lupita hid behind Rosa's leg. Don Basilio bowed his head as if greeting someone important, but he didn't. He lowered his voice, and what he said sounded like an order wrapped in a warning. You can't have dinner here. Not tonight. Don Basilio remained in the doorway. As the mistress of the house, Rosa swallowed hard. She wanted to explain that the man had arrived soaking wet and had only asked for a plate of food. But in that kitchen, explanations were almost always a noose around your neck. Joaquin got up slowly. He made no noise as he moved the chair. You could tell he knew how to behave in someone else's home. If I have caused any inconvenience, I will leave, Joaquin said with dry courtesy. Don Basilio let out a brief, joyless laugh. It's no trouble, he replied. It's inconvenient. Inconvenient how? Joaquin asked. Because there is order here, Basilio replied, glancing sideways at Rosa and the children. An order is respected. Rosa felt Tomas press closer to her skirt. I'm done, she murmured in a low voice. If the children have eaten, I'm going to get back to work. Don Basilio didn't look at her. His attention remained fixed on Joaquin. Come with me, Basilio said. I'll assign you a place. No, here. Joaquin held his gaze. They offered me this chair, he replied. And that was a mistake, Basilio cut in. Rosa wanted to defend herself, but she couldn't find her voice. Instead, she stroked Lupita's head. Go to the corner, she whispered to her children. Stay there quietly. Tomas didn't want to, but he obeyed. Lupita walked close to the wall, holding on to Rosa's skirt until the last moment. Joaquin looked at them, his expression hardening slightly. It's not necessary to treat a mother and her children like that, he said. Don Basilio smiled slightly. In this house, everyone knows their place, he replied. Joaquin took a step towards the door, neither approaching Basilio nor backing away. Then tell me mine, he said. Rosa felt the impact of those words as if something dangerous had been ignited in the air. Basilio narrowed his eyes. Yours, he said, is where they can't see you. Rosa turned to Joaquin in alarm. She wanted to tell him not to get involved, that everything came at a price here. But Joaquin looked at her for a moment and, without speaking directly to her, seemed to understand. All right, Joaquin said at last. I didn't come here to cause trouble. Don Basilio nodded with satisfaction. That's the most sensible thing I've heard you say, he said. Joaquin picked up his suitcase. Before leaving, he turned to Rosa. Thanks for dinner, he said. Sure, you scoundrel. Rosa looked down as if being thanked by him burned her. You're welcome, she'd murmured. Basilio waited for Joaquin to go first. Once they were in the hallway, he stopped and turned toward the Rosa only. Don't open that door to just anyone again, she said in a low voice. He was just a traveler, Rosa tried to explain. That's what you say, Basilio replied. Rosa clutched her apron. I didn't do anything wrong, she said, except for him. Basilio leaned in slightly, just enough to make the threat subtle and therefore more cruel. On this estate, wrong is whatever upsets the lady, he whispered. And lately you've been very visible. Rosa felt her legs go weak. Tomas looked at her from the corner with wide eyes. I'm not looking for trouble, said Rosa. Then don't look for it, especially with strangers, replied Basilio. He stood up straight and left, following Joaquin. Rosa remained in the kitchen, once again surrounded by silence. The rain continued, but it no longer seemed like ordinary rain. It seemed like surveillance. Tomas approached slowly. Who was he, she wondered. Rosa crouched down to his height. A man who got lost, he said. Nothing else. Lupita pulled her by the apron. Is he gone, she asked. Yes, my dear, said Rosa, although she wasn't sure. He's already sat down again. You're going to sleep here, close by, she ordered. I don't want you walking around the hallway. Why? Asked Tomas. Rosa fell silent for a moment. Because I said so, she finally replied, kissing his forehead. Just do as I say. The children obeyed. Rosa cleared the dishes away quickly. The smallest piece of bread remained on the table, untouched. She looked at it. She was ashamed to feel like crying over a piece of bread. She wrapped it in a napkin and put it in her apron pocket, hiding it as though it were a treasure. Then she turned the fire down a little. She sat listening to the rain and her heartbeat. Late into the night, she heard distant footsteps. She didn't know if they belonged to Joaquin or Basilio. The farm had its own sounds, each one a warning. Rosa didn't sleep well. She woke up every few minutes to check that the children were still breathing peacefully. At dawn, the rain eased off. The gray sky did not promise anything good. Rosa got up before anyone else, tucked the children in, and left them in the care of a young girl sweeping the hallway. Carmelita, she said, squeezing her hand. If anyone asks, you didn't see anything. Do you hear me? Carmelita opened her eyes. Rosa, what happened? Nothing, Rosa replied too quickly. But do me a favor. Carmelita hesitated. All right, she whispered, looking towards the big house. Rosa went into the kitchen. 2 cooks were already there whispering. When they saw her, they lowered their voices, but not enough. They say an important man arrived, said one of them. They say he didn't come alone, replied the other with an unpleasant smile. Rosa pretended not to hear. She tied her apron tighter. What's for breakfast? She asked casually. One of the cooks looked her up and down. The usual, she said. The usual for you. Rosa nodded. The usual was a polite way of saying nothing extra. She began to grind on the metate. The noise helped her to block out the gossip, but it always found a way through. They saw him in the kitchen last night, one of the cooks blurted out, as if dropping a stone into a well. Rosa felt the blow to the back of her neck, but didn't turn around. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. About you, of course, insisted the other. You were talking to the guest until they had dinner together. Rosa gripped the stone so tightly that her fingers trembled. I didn't talk, she said. I served. Uh-huh, hummed the first. It served. Of course. Rosa forced herself to breathe. If she answered, it would only make things worse. At that moment, a waiter entered with a tray. Rosa said without looking at her, The lady says to report to her when you're done here. Rosa's body froze. Now, she asked. When you're done, the waiter repeated and left. The cooks remained silent, but their eyes sparkled with delight. Rosa felt humiliated even before she stepped into the hallway. She continued working. Her hands moved of their own accord, but inside everything shrank. Once she had finished the urgent tasks, she stepped out into the hallway. She found Joaquin standing under an eave on the other side of the courtyard. His jacket was dry and his hair was combed. He looked like a different man, but his eyes were still tired. Seeing her, he raised his hand as if to greet her respectfully. Rosa lowered her gaze. She couldn't greet him. Not here. Joaquin understood, dropping his hand. At the door of the big house, Don Basilio was waiting for her. "Hurry up," he said, not shouting. "The lady won't wait." Rosa walked. Each step was heavy. When she entered, the air changed. It smelled of wax and antique furniture and of something foreign. Doña Elvira was sitting upright in the living room. She held a cup of hot chocolate, as if this morning were like any other. Next to her, a niece or visitor sat embroidering, not looking up or acknowledging her presence. Doña Elvira looked at Rosa calmly. Rosa spoke as if pronouncing an object. "Come closer." Rosa advanced with her head down. "Good morning, ma'am," she murmured. Doña Elvira put down her cup. "Good morning," she replied unkindly. "I'm told there was some strange activity last night." Rosa felt her mouth go dry. Only one traveler arrived. She went to the kitchen and asked Doña Elvira about it. How curious. Travelers usually arrive at the main entrance. Rosa clenched her hands. "I don't know why she arrived there," she said. "It was raining." Doña Elvira smiled slightly. "It always rains for someone," she said. "And there are always those who take advantage of the rain." Rosa looked up unintentionally. The phrase struck her as an accusation. "I didn't take advantage of anything," she said. She instantly regretted the tone. Doña Elvira narrowed her eyes. "Are you talking back to me?" she asked softly. Rosa lowered her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she murmured. "I didn't mean to." Doña Elvira picked up her cup again. She took a sip, as if that would give her time to choose the perfect punishment. "I'm told," she continued, "that you sat down to dinner with the guest." "I only served," said Rosa, her heart in her mouth. "And you also broke bread, right?" Doña Elvira tilted her head. What a touching scene. The word moving sounded like mockery. Rosa felt shame rise to her cheeks, not because she had broken bread, but because she felt exposed. "That's all?" she said, biting her tongue. Doña Elvira, once again speaking out of turn, set her cup down with a tap. "That's what worries me," she said. "The fact that an employee believes she has the freedom to decide how to serve a guest, and even more so, to entertain him." Rosa felt the ground slipping away from under her. "I didn't entertain him," she said in a barely audible voice. The niece or visitor looked up for a second curiously. Rosa wanted to disappear. "Ma'am," Rosa said, gathering her courage, "I just take care of my children." "I didn't mean to." Doña Elvira raised a hand. "Your children," she repeated as if it were an annoying detail, always bringing them up as a shield. Rosa pressed her lips together. "It wasn't a shield. It was my life." "In this house, there are rules," Doña Elvira continued. "The kitchen is not a place for visitors, and you're not here to foster intimacy." Rosa felt the word intimacy pierce her. "I'm just—" Doña Elvira cut her off. "Not just. You know how these things are viewed." Rosa swallowed hard. "Ma'am, please," she said, hating herself for sounding so pleading. Doña Elvira looked at her coldly. "I'm warning you, Rosa," she said. "If you cause any more gossip, you and your children will be gone." Rosa felt dizzy and, without thinking, grabbed the back of a chair. "My children are not to blame," she said, louder than she intended. Doña Elvira leaned forward slightly. "Neither should you," she said. "You should forget who's in charge here." Rosa breathed as if she were short of breath. "I obey," she murmured. At that moment, a voice was heard at the doorway. "Doña Elvira," said Joaquin, entering politely. Rosa felt a wave of fear wash over her. If he got involved, Doña Elvira would crush him, and her along with him. Doña Elvira looked up, surprised, just enough. "Sir," she said, studying his face, "I didn't think you were up yet." "I am," Joaquin replied. "I overheard their conversation. I beg your pardon, but I cannot allow Rosa to be blamed for last night." Rosa closed her eyes for a moment. "No, no, please." Doña Elvira smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. "Blame," she repeated. "I'm just putting things in order." "Then put things in order where they belong," said Joaquin. I was the one who asked to come into the kitchen. I was the one who asked for a chair. Rosa didn't ask for anything. Doña Elvira looked at him closely. You speak with great confidence for a traveler, she said. Joaquin held her gaze. Speaking clearly is not a crime, he replied. Doña Elvira. She put down her cup. And who are you? Exactly, she asked with dangerous gentleness. Rosa felt Joaquin take a deep breath. A man who needed shelter last night, he replied, and who received dignity at a humble table. Rosa opened her eyes in fear. The phrase was beautiful, yes, but beauty was punished here. Doña Elvira rose slowly. The rustle of her dress sounded like a sentence. What an unexpected speech, she said. I appreciate your opinion. However, my relationships with my employees are none of your concern. It is my concern if my presence puts them at risk, Joaquin replied. Rosa wanted to speak. No, sir. Joaquin raised a hand, not looking at her, to ask her to be quiet. Rosa felt small, yet also seen. This confused her. Doña Elvira took a step forward. If your presence here is so delicate, she said, you should leave as soon as possible. This estate is not an inn. Joaquin clenched his jaw. I will leave when the road allows it, he replied. But I repeat, Rosa does not deserve to be punished. Doña Elvira looked at him with poisonous calm. Rosa said without turning to her, go back to your work and understand this. A guest can leave. You don't have that luxury. Rosa felt her face burning. She bowed slightly. Yes, ma'am, she murmured, leaving without looking at Joaquin because she might break down if she did. In the hallway, Don Basilio was waiting, as usual in the perfect spot to hear everything. You see, he said quietly, following her. You've already attracted attention. I didn't do anything, Rosa replied without turning around. That's what you think, said Basilio. Rosa clenched her fists. My children, she said, unable to finish. Basilio moved a little closer, but didn't touch her. Watch your tongue, Rosa, he murmured. Watch your hands, watch your eyes, because anything can be interpreted here. Rosa continued walking to the kitchen. The cooks looked at her as if she were in a show. What did the lady say to you? One of them asked, feigning concern. Rosa didn't answer. She got to work, putting water on the stove, washing dishes, and chopping onions. Anything to take her mind off it. But she couldn't stop thinking about Doña Elvira's words. Your children are leaving too. She repeated them over and over again in her head. At noon, Rosa looked for Carmelita. Bring them here, she said. Let them eat with me, Rosa. Rosa, and you bring them, she insisted quietly but firmly. Even if it's here, behind the cupboard, Carmelita nodded nervously. The children arrived in silence. Rosa served them each one bean taco. She kept a small jar of water. Tomas looked at her. Did they scold you? He asked. Rosa adjusted the collar of his shirt. Yes, she said. But don't worry. Why are they looking at us funny? Asked Lupita, her eyes moist. Rosa felt a lump in her throat. Because they don't know how to look properly, she replied, forcing herself to smile. Tomas squeezed the taco. I can work, he said, as if making a promise. Rosa looked at him in pain. Don't say that so quickly. Your job is to learn and take care of your sister. Tomas looked down, angry with the world. At that moment, the kitchen door opened. Not forcefully, but enough for everyone to turn around. It was Joaquin. He was holding a small cloth bag. Rosa stood up abruptly. Sir, you can't be here, she said nervously. If they see you, I'm done for, he replied, lowering his voice. I'm not here to cause any more harm. I just wanted to leave this. Rosa frowned. I can't accept anything, she said. It's not charity, Joaquin replied. It's gratitude. Rosa clutched her apron. That has to be paid for too, she muttered. Joaquin took a slow step forward, as if his mere presence could break something. Last night, he said, you handed out bread without thinking twice. I couldn't sleep. Rosa swallowed. She could feel the cooks listening from the other table, pretending not to hear. Please, she said tensely. Joaquin nodded in understanding and placed the cloth bag on a shelf out of Rosa's reach, as if that would protect her. I'll just leave it there, he said. If you don't want it, throw it away. I won't be offended. Rosa didn't look at the femme, she looked at the floor. Thank you, she murmured. It hurt to say it. Joaquin looked at the children with a gentleness that was not pity. Tomas, he said, remembering his name. Lupita. The children stood still. Lupita hid her face in her mother's arms. Good morning, Joaquin said, smiling slightly. Good morning, Tomas replied suspiciously. Joaquin turned to Rosa. I'm sorry about earlier, he said. I know I may have made things worse. Rosa clenched her teeth. Yes, she said, unable to help herself. You made them worse. Joaquin didn't seem offended. He just looked down and accepted it. You're right, he said, but I couldn't stay silent. Rosa looked at him directly for the first time. Staying silent is what keeps the children under a roof, she said in a low, trembling voice, full of contained rage. You can leave. I can't. Joaquin looked at her seriously. I know, he said, and that's why I'll try not to expose you, but I'll also try to understand. Rosa breathed out. She hated herself for even considering trusting him. She couldn't. Understand? It doesn't change anything, she said. Joaquin nodded, as if the phrase had struck him too. Maybe he hadn't said it, but sometimes it's the beginning. Rosa was about to respond when she heard footsteps. She tensed. Joaquin heard them too. He stepped Arce. Don Basilio entered. He looked from Joaquin to Rosa, then at the children. It lingered on the cloth bag on the shelf. Ah, he said softly. I see you're still talking. Rosa felt a chill run down her neck. I was just serving, she replied quickly. Joaquin spoke first. I came to thank you, he said calmly. Don Basilio smiled. How kind, he said. Although, sir, I remind you that the lady does not like familiarity. Joaquin held his gaze. Then I'll leave, he said. Don Basilio nodded in satisfaction. That would be best, he replied. Joaquin left without looking at Rosa. She stood stiffly, waiting for the verbal blow. Don Basilio approached the windowsill, picked up the cloth bag with 2 fingers as if it were dirty, and shook it slightly. And this? He asked, holding up the bag. Rosa? She felt her heart rise to her throat. I didn't ask for it, she said. Here it is, Basilio replied, and what's here is interpreted. Rosa pressed her lips together. Tomas stood up as if to defend her. Rosa pulled him back down by the sleeve. Sit down, she ordered him, her harshness directed more at her fear than at him. Basilio put the bag down again as if he wanted everyone to see it. Make no mistake, Rosa said in a low voice. The lady already has her eye on you. Do you want your children to bear the burden of your recklessness? Rosa turned pale. No, she whispered. I don't. Then behave as you always should have, said Basilio. Rosa lowered her head. Yes, she whispered. Basilio left, leaving the air heavy. Once he had gone, Rosa felt her hands trembling. She forced herself to continue serving the children. She couldn't cry. Then Tomas spoke softly. That man is evil, he said. Rosa looked at him, frightened. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't say anything. And Mr. Joaquin asked Lupita, who was still hidden. He's not evil. Rosa closed her eyes for a moment. No, he said. No. Carmelita approached and whispered, Rosa, they're looking for you. Rosa tensed up. Who? Carmelita turned towards the hallway. One of the people from the big house said that Doña Elvira wants you to clean the living room today, and that you should bring the children with you so they don't get in the way. Rosa felt a pang of pain. Taking the children to the big house would expose them to stares and taunts, but she couldn't refuse. All right, she said. Tomas squeezed his sister's hand. Rosa wiped their mouths with the edge of her apron and took them by the hand. As she stepped out onto the porch, she could feel eyes on her from all sides. She couldn't see any faces, only shadows and whispers. There she goes, she heard someone say. She thinks she's so important, said another voice. Rosa walked without turning around. Every step she took was an offense to them, simply for existing. She arrived at the hall and was given a rag and a bucket. Doña Elvira was at the back with 2 other women drinking tea. Rosa lowered her head. Start with the windows, ordered one of the women without looking at her. Rosa obeyed. The children stood still against the wall as she had asked them to. Lupita rubbed her hands nervously. Tomas stared at the floor as if he wanted to turn to stone. Doña Elvira spoke loudly enough for Rosa to hear, but did not address her directly. There are people here, she said, confusing a gesture of courtesy with an invitation. One of the women let out a stifled laugh. What a shame, replied the other. But that's how they are. They always want to come up. Rosa felt her face burning. She continued cleaning, breathing through her mouth so as not to cry. Tomas clenched his fists. Rosa saw him out of the corner of her eye and shook her head, silently begging him to be quiet. After a while, Joaquin appeared in the hallway. Rosa saw his reflection in the glass. He stopped when he saw her cleaning, the children standing like shadows behind her. Doña Elvira saw him too. Her smile fixed itself in an instant. Señor Joaquin, she said sweetly, how nice to see you. I hope you've had a good rest. Rosa continued cleaning without looking up. Enough, Joaquin replied seriously. Doña Elvira gestured elegantly toward the living room. I'm sorry about last night's inconvenience, she said. The house has rules, you understand. I understand, Joaquin replied, his voice lacking warmth. Doña Elvira moved a little closer and said that she would understand too. She said that employees sometimes get confused. They think a kind word will change their lives. Rosa felt humiliated. Joaquin fell silent for a moment. Rosa feared he would respond. She feared he would defend her. She feared that everything would fall apart. But Joaquin spoke calmly, measuring each word. A kind word doesn't change your life, Doña Elvira, he said, but it does show who you are. Doña Elvira smiled as though she thought it was a game. How philosophical, she said. Anyway, if you need anything, Don Basilio will take care of you. Joaquin bowed his head slightly. Thank you, he said, then he left. Rosa continued cleaning. Her back felt stiff. The children were quiet and obedient, as if the air itself were giving them orders. When they finally let her out, she walked with the children to the courtyard. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't let go of them. In the hallway, she heard two servants talking, unaware that she was nearby. They say that visitor is no ordinary man, said one. They say he's traveling incognito, replied the other. And why would they hide him? Because there are old stories here, murmured the first. Like Don Mateo, Rosa stopped dead in her tracks. The name hit her like a bucket of cold water. In front of her, Joaquin turned with a frown as if he had heard it too, repeating it in a low voice, surprised. Don Mateo. And Rosa froze. The name hung in the air as if written on the wall by the rain. Rosa squeezed Lupita's hand so hard that the girl winced. Mother, it hurts, she whispered. Rosa immediately loosened her grip. I'm sorry, sweetheart, she said without looking up. Joaquin was still facing her. He wasn't looking at her as if he were a judge. He was looking at her as if he had just realized that he wasn't hearing mere gossip. Rosa said softly. She shook her head almost involuntarily. She didn't murmur. Don't talk to me. Tomas pulled her by her apron. What's wrong? He asked anxiously. Nothing, Rosa lied. Keep walking. She continued walking with the children, not turning around. Her body felt stiff, as if any movement might betray her. She heard footsteps behind her. Joaquin was following her, but not getting too close, as if he understood that doing so would condemn her. They reached a corner of the courtyard where there were some sacks and a pile of firewood. Rosa took a deep breath. She tried to position the children so that they wouldn't be seen. Tomas, stay here with your sister, she ordered. Don't move. Where are you going? Where are you going? Tomas asked. To get water, Rosa replied quickly. I'll go, Tomas offered. No, Rosa said firmly, softening her voice. You take care of Lupita. Tomas nodded, clenching his jaw as if reluctant to obey. Rosa took 2 steps towards the well, and there, unable to help himself, Joaquin stood beside her. I heard the name, he said in a low voice. I'm sorry. Rosa kept walking. You hear a lot of things on this ranch, she said, not looking at him. Don't believe them. Then why were you scared? Joaquin asked directly. Rosa stopped. Her fingers trembled on the edge of the bucket. Because here fear is free, Joaquin replied. He paused for a moment. Who was Don Mateo? He insisted. Rosa pressed her lips together. I don't know, she lied. Joaquin looked at her patiently, but didn't give up. I don't want to hurt you, said Rosa. I just want to understand why they treat you like this. Rosa let out a brief, bitter laugh. You really don't understand? She finally asked, looking at him. They treat me like this because they can. Joaquin took a deep breath. Last night I saw how you handed out the bread, he said. Today I saw how they humiliate you without touching you. That's not normal. Rosa lowered her voice. It's normal here, she said. If you want to live in peace, it's best if you leave. Joaquin clenched his jaw. I was going to leave, he confessed. But now that name. Rosa looked at him alertly. Why do you care, she asked. Joaquin hesitated. That hesitation wasn't cowardice. It was calculation, as if everything he said could come back to haunt him. Because I have things I can't talk about, he finally replied. When someone is forced to keep quiet, it's almost always because they're hiding something. Rosa felt a chill. She wanted to end the conversation. I already told you, don't look for me. Joaquin didn't stop her. He stood there watching her fill the bucket. Rosa returned to the children. She found them quiet and obedient, their eyes fixed on the ground. Let's go to the kitchen, she said. Tomas looked up. What is it, Don Mateo? He blurted out, unable to hold back. Rosa crouched down in front of him and squeezed his shoulders firmly. Don't ever say that name again, she ordered quietly. Did you hear me? Tomas was frightened by her tone. Yes, Lupita, he whispered. She tugged at Rosa's dress. He's bad, she asked. Rosa took a deep breath. No, she said, her voice trembling slightly. It's not for you. She stood up quickly, as if crying were a weakness she couldn't afford. They returned to the kitchen. Rosa threw herself into her work because it was the only place where she could maintain a straight face without being asked questions. Less than an hour later, Don Basilio appeared at the door, seemingly having been waiting for her. Rosa spoke with a calmness that was more powerful than a shout. Come here. Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. Now what? She asked, then stopped. She shouldn't have spoken like that. Don Basilio looked at her as if he had already taken note of it. You're going to the North Wing storeroom, Tuz, he said. You have to count the beans, corn, and sugar. Rosa stood still. That's not my job, she said carefully. Your job is whatever I say it is, Basilio replied. The lady wants order. Rosa turned to look at her children who were pressed against the wall and asked them. Basilio smiled slightly. Let them stay with Carmelita, he said, or with whoever. They can't follow you everywhere you go. Rosa felt the blow. No, she said without thinking. They're staying with me. Basilio took a step closer. He lowered his voice. Rosa murmured, Don't make me repeat myself. You're too visible. Rosa clutched her apron. I wasn't looking for anything, she insisted. But you found it, said Basilio. His eyes moved toward the entrance, as if he could see Joaquin through the walls. And when a woman like you finds things, she forgets her place. Rosa felt shame rising up inside her. My place is with my children, she said firmly. Your place is where you're not in the way, Basilio replied. And just so you understand, I'm warning you. If you cross paths with that man again today, she'll think you're provoking him. Rosa swallowed hard. So what? She whispered. Basilio bowed his head as if in deep thought. Perhaps it would be better for the children to stay here, he said. There are institutions, Rosa. There are shelters. There are families who take in children if you know where to look. Rosa's color drained. She didn't let go, and her voice trembled. Not them. Basilio raised his hands as if he hadn't said anything wrong. I'm just warning you, and he murmured, so you'll behave. Rosa clenched her jaw, swallowing her tears as if they were poison. I'm going to the cellar, she said, but the children are staying with me. Basilio looked at her for a long time. All right, he agreed as if granting her a favor, but don't let them out of your sight, and don't make a scene. Rosa took Tomas and Lupita by the hand and left. She walked towards the north wing, feeling as though each step was pulling a thread tight. She wanted to run. She wanted to leave. But where? In the cellar, the smell of grain and damp hit her in the face. Basilio pointed to boxes and sacks. Count, he ordered, and write it down. Rosa wasn't a scribe, but she knew her numbers. She knelt down next to the sacks and sat the children on a platform. Don't move, she said to Tomas. Yes, he replied resentfully. Lupita hugged her knees. They're going to take us away, she whispered. Rosa stroked her cheek. No one is going to take you away, she promised, although inside she wasn't sure. Joaquin did not appear during that time, and instead of reassuring her, this made her even more anxious. Rosa felt as if the hacienda were closing its doors one by one, leaving only a dark hallway. When the counting was finished, Basilio returned. Good, Mighty said, checking the paper. You see, you are good for something. Rosa did not answer. Basilio continued. Go back to your work and try not to bump into the visitor. Rosa nodded. As she left the warehouse, the sun was just peeking through the clouds. The courtyard was bustling with activity, waiters, maids, and a saddled horse. In the corridor, Joaquin was talking to an older man with a gray mustache who was dressed as a foreman. Rosa stopped short, wanting to turn around, but Joaquin looked up and saw her. He didn't speak to her, just looked at her quietly and seriously. The foreman also saw her and quickly looked away, as if he didn't want to get into trouble. Rosa pulled the children along. Let's go, she said quickly. Tomas caught a glimpse of Joaquin. It's him, he whispered. Rosa pulled him closer. Don't look, she said, although it was impossible. Once in the kitchen, Rosa tried to carry on, but she couldn't stop thinking about that foreman. That foreman. Why was Joaquin talking to him? What was he looking for? It wasn't long before Carmelita came running in, her face white. Rosa closed the door behind her and whispered, They're asking for you. Rosa looked up. Who? She asked, her heart racing. That man, said Carmelita. The traveler is asking for you, but not by name. He's asking about the woman in the kitchen, the one with the children. Rosa felt a wave of panic. Tell him she didn't say anything. Tell him to go away. Carmelita swallowed hard. I already told him he can't see you, she whispered. But Rosa, he doesn't seem like a bad guy. Rosa clenched her teeth. It's not about him, she said. It's about what he provokes. At that moment, the head cook entered. Put down the metate, said Rosa. The lady wants you to take a tray to the office. Rosa froze. The office belonged to either Don Basilio or Doña Elvira, and nothing good ever happened there. Now, she asked, trying not to let her fear show. Now, repeated the cook, looking at her with a strange mixture of emotions, as if she felt sorry for her, too. Rosa prepared the tray with clumsy hands, bread, coffee, and a small plate. She took the children by the hand. The cook didn't tell her. Children are not allowed in. Rosa stood her ground. Then where? She asked. In the hallway, replied the cook with a shrug. It won't take long. Rosa wanted to refuse, but she couldn't. Tomas squeezed his sister's hand. I'll take care of them, he said, even though he was barely old enough. Rosa looked at him and something inside her broke. Stay here, she ordered. Don't move. If anyone talks to you, don't answer. Yes, they both said. Rosa walked towards the office with the tray as if she were carrying a stone. She knocked softly. Come in, said Don Basilio's voice. She entered. The office was cold and furnished with dark wood. Doña Elvira was sitting upright and Don Basilio was standing by the window. To Rosa's surprise, Joaquin was leaning against a chair as if he had been invited in. Rosa felt her heart rise to her throat. At first, Doña Elvira didn't even look at her. Put that down, she ordered. Rosa put the tray down and took a step back. Don Basilio watched her with a slight smile. How punctual, he said. Rosa remained silent. Joaquin spoke up. Doña Elvira, he said, I apologize, but I insist on clearing up yesterday's misunderstanding. Doña Elvira looked at him as though he were a mosquito that had buzzed too close. There was no misunderstanding, she said. There was an employee who forgot her place. Rosa felt her face burn. Joaquin remained calm. I was the one who asked to enter the kitchen, he repeated. I don't want anyone to be punished for that. Doña Elvira took a leisurely sip of coffee. You're free to think what you want, she said, but my employees obey my rules. Joaquin lowered his voice. Can I talk to Rosa alone, he asked. Rosa felt her throat close up. No, not here. Doña Elvira let out a soft laugh. What a strange idea, she said. No, sir. Rosa is not a lady who receives visitors. She's an employee. Joaquin clenched his jaw. Then I'll speak to her here, he said. I just want to know why she is being treated so harshly. Don Basilio quickly intervened. Mr. Joaquin, he said, you are just passing through. It's not a good idea to get involved in household matters. Joaquin looked at him, and Rosa sensed a silent clash in that look. Joaquin, said Caporal Ignacio without turning around. He told me that before, he continued. People here spoke of a certain Don Mateo with respect. Doña Elvira stood still for a second. Just a second. But Rosa saw it. She felt the ground move beneath her feet. Don Basilio saw it too and tensed up. "Are you talking to my men?" asked Doña Elvira, her voice steady. "Talking is not a crime," replied Joaquin, repeating his own words. Doña Elvira held the cup tightly. "I advise you, she said slowly, not to ask about things that are none of your business." Joaquin did not back down. "I have obligations too," he said, "and when I see injustice, I find it hard to ignore it." Doña Elvira smiled coldly. "How generous," she said, "but there is no injustice here. There is discipline." Rosa felt that they were using her as an example, a warning. Don Basilio approached the table and looked at Rosa. "See," he said softly, "this is what you cause." Rosa clenched her fists, but forced herself to stay where she was. Even so, the words escaped her. "I didn't cause anything," she said, trembling. "I just work." Doña Elvira finally turned and looked her straight in the eye. "And you talk back," she said, as if that were the worst thing. "I told you, Rosa, you pay for your comments." Rosa looked down. Joaquin took a step towards Doña Elvira, approaching her with presence, but not invading her personal space. "If I'm the problem," he said, "I'll leave today." Don Basilio nodded as if that were the right answer. "The best thing," he murmured. But Doña Elvira raised her hand. She didn't say, "You're not leaving today. The road outside is muddy. You'll stay until the storm passes. I don't want people saying we kicked out a guest." Joaquin understood the venom behind those words. She wanted to keep him close so that she could control him. "All right," he said, "but then I ask one thing. Leave Rosa alone." Doña Elvira smiled. "Alone," she repeated. "Señor Joaquin, you speak as if Rosa were a victim. Rosa is just an employee with children. Nothing more." Rosa felt her chest tighten. That nothing more was a stone. Joaquin turned to look at her for a moment, and without meaning to, she looked back at him. In that moment, there was no estate, no rules, just two people looking at the same thing. Suddenly, Rosa looked down. She couldn't. She shouldn't. Doña Elvira waved her hand as if shooing away flies. "Rosa," she ordered, "leave, and make sure your children don't get in the way. I'm tired of seeing them on every corner." Rosa felt a twinge as if her soul had been torn out. "Yes, ma'am," she murmured, taking a step back. Before leaving, Joaquin lowered his voice so that only Rosa could hear him and spoke to her, not Doña Elvira. "This afternoon, I'm going to town," he said. "I need to talk to the priest." Rosa stood still. Her heart stopped for a moment. She whispered without turning around, "Don't do that." "Why?" Joaquin asked softly. Rosa clenched her teeth. "Because it's not good for you," she replied before leaving. In the hallway, her children were where she had left them. Tomas looked at her with anguish. "What happened?" he asked. Rosa pulled them towards the kitchen. "Nothing," she said. "Come." But inside she was screaming. That afternoon, Rosa tried to do the impossible. Find a way out without being seen. She checked an old backpack and counted her coins. There were hardly any, almost nothing. She thought about the village, about finding a cheap room and getting a job washing clothes. She thought about running away at night. Tomas watched her. "Are we leaving?" he asked, as if he had guessed. Rosa froze. "Who told you that?" she asked. "No one," he replied, "but I can see you." Rosa closed her eyes for a moment. "Maybe," she admitted quietly. "Maybe we're leaving." Lupita opened her eyes. "What about my dolls?" she asked, pointing to a rag doll. Rosa swallowed, forcing herself to smile. "We'll take those," she said. "Always." Tomas moved closer. "Is it because of that man?" he asked angrily. "Because of Joaquin?" Rosa shook her head quickly. "No," she said, "it's because of the house." Tomas clenched his fists. "I hate this house," he muttered. Rosa gently grabbed his chin to make him look at her. "Don't say hate," she said. "Don't say it here." Tomas looked down. "Then what should I say?" he asked. Rosa was at a loss for words. At that moment, there was a soft but firm knock on the kitchen door. Rosa tensed. "Who is it?" she asked. "It's me," Joaquin said from the other side. "I won't come in if you don't let me." Rosa looked at her children. They made themselves as small as possible, as if they understood the danger. Rosa took a deep breath. "Come in," she said, barely above a whisper. Joaquin entered alone without a suitcase or a coat. His hands were empty, as if to show that he had come with nothing to offer. He stopped at a safe distance. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know I shouldn't have come." Rosa didn't invite him to sit down. "Then don't come," she replied, trembling with rage. "Why do you insist?" Joaquin looked at her honestly. "Because I can't stop thinking about your children," he said, "and because today I heard Basilio talking about shelters." Rosa felt the world spinning. "What did you hear?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Enough to know that they're pressuring you," Joaquin replied. "Rosa, tell me the truth. What connects you to that name? What does Don Mateo mean to you?" Rosa took a step back, as if the question had hit her. "Don't ask me," Joaquin whispered. He lowered his voice even more. "I went to town," he said. "I asked about the priest. They told me that Father Julian doesn't talk about certain things unless he's holding his hand steady." Rosa squeezed her eyes shut. "You see," she whispered, "he's already gotten involved." "Yes," Joaquin agreed. "And I didn't do it out of curiosity. I did it because today I saw the way they look at you, as if you weren't a person." Rosa clutched her apron tightly. "I am a person," she said almost breathlessly. "I know," Joaquin replied, "but here they treat you as if you have to ask permission to breathe." Tomas stepped forward a little. "Brave, sir," he said in a tense voice. "My mother did nothing wrong." Joaquin looked at him with respect. "I believe that," he said. Rosa pulled Tomas back. "Don't talk," she ordered softly. Joaquin looked at Rosa, and there was a different kind of concern in his eyes, as if he were afraid too, not for himself, but for what he was discovering. "If you tell me the truth, maybe I can help you," Rosa said. She let out a broken laugh. "How can you help me?" she asked. "With words. Words are hard for me here." "With more than words," Joaquin replied, pausing to consider what he could say. "I have resources, I have a name, even though I don't use it today." Rosa looked at him suspiciously. "What name?" she asked. Joaquin fell silent for a moment. He took a breath. "I can't say for now," he admitted. "If I say it, I'll be exposing you and myself. But I swear I'm not playing games." Rosa felt her legs tremble. "You don't understand," she said desperately. "This isn't about money, it's about unforgivable things." "Then tell me what they are," Joaquin insisted. Rosa turned towards the door, as if she feared someone was on the other side. She lowered her voice so much that it was almost inaudible. "There are decisions," she said, "that you make to save your children. And then those decisions become a chain." Joaquin took a step closer. "Just one." "What decision?" he asked. Rosa clutched the rosary in her apron pocket, not taking it out. Her fingers found the worn little metal. She could feel the cold metal, as if the truth had a temperature. Tomas looked at her, frightened. "Mother," he said, "what's wrong?" Rosa swallowed. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. She wanted to lie, as she always did. She wanted to shut the door and hide, but Joaquin was there. His eyes did not mock her. They held a patience that she did not remember ever receiving before. Rosa took a deep breath and for the first time in years, allowed herself to say something she had never said out loud before. "I wasn't just an employee, I was a wife." She was left breathless after saying it, as if the words had come out with blood and left her empty inside. Joaquin didn't speak right away. He looked at her seriously, his eyes fixed on hers, as if he were afraid someone would come and steal that truth away from her. Tomas blinked rapidly. "Whose wife?" he asked, confused, his voice breaking. Lupita clung to her mother's apron. "What's that?" she asked, as if it were a foreign word. Rosa closed her eyes for a moment and forced herself to breathe. "My love," she said to Tomas, her hands trembling. "There are things that are said in a low voice, and there are things that are not said here." Tomas clenched his teeth. "But you already said it," he complained. Rosa looked at him, sadness evident despite her efforts to hide it. "I said it because it got stuck." She swallowed. "Because fear no longer lets me think." Joaquin took a slow step, careful not to invade her personal space. "Rosa," he said in a low voice, "whose wife were you?" Rosa looked at the door as if she expected to see a shadow clinging to the frame. She heard nothing. Still, she lowered her voice even further. "Don Mateo's," she replied softly. Tomas's eyes widened. Don Mateo de la Casa Grande? He asked, unable to comprehend that such a thing was possible. Rosa gently but firmly covered his mouth with her hand. Don't say it, she pleaded. Please. Joaquin clenched his jaw, not out of anger, but because of the helplessness growing in his chest. So that's the name, he murmured. Rosa nodded without looking up. Yes, she said, and that's why they hate us. That's why they want to wipe us out. Joaquin took a deep breath. I need you to tell me, he said. Only what's necessary. To know where to start, he said. Rosa laughed half-heartedly. Start, she repeated. I've been trying not to start anything for years. Joaquin didn't move. If you let it out today, he said, it's because you can no longer carry it alone. Rosa pressed her fingers against the rosary hidden in her apron. She finally took it out, as if keeping it there was burning her. The little metal gleamed. It had barely been worn. Tomas recognized it. You always carry that, he said. Rosa carefully showed it to Joaquin. It's the only thing they couldn't take from me, she confessed. Joaquin took the medal between his fingers, examining it closely without touching it. What does it say? He asked. Rosa swallowed. His initials, she said, and the date. Joaquin turned it over with his fingertip. It's very worn, he said. I've used it too much, Rosa replied. Tomas looked at the medal as if it were proof of something enormous. Why don't you tell the lady? He asked, speaking with the simple logic of a child. Rosa let out a short sigh. Because the lady knows, she said, and that's why she has me here. Lupita frowned. Then why are we afraid of her? She asked. Rosa bent down and smoothed her hair. Because when a person decides you don't exist, they do everything they can to make you believe it, she said, not realizing how harshly it sounded. Joaquin looked at her. His voice was firm. Where did they get married? He asked. Rosa hesitated, then replied, in the village with Father Julian at night, without a party. Joaquin nodded. Acta? He asked. Rosa pressed her lips together. There must be one, she said, but I've never seen it. Why? Joaquin persisted. Rosa looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and anger. After Don Mateo died, she said, Doña Elvira called me to the big house. She told me that if I spoke out, my children would grow up stigmatized. But if I kept quiet, she would let me work here and nobody would hurt us. Tomas clenched his fists. That's not fair, he muttered. Rosa touched his cheek. I wasn't looking for justice, she said. I just wanted you to have enough to eat. Joaquin pressed his fingers against the metal, then forced himself to let go of it and give it back to her. Father Julian knows, he asked. Rosa nodded. He knows, she said, but he's afraid, and so am I. Joaquin fell silent for a moment, thinking quickly. I'm going to talk to him, he said. Rosa stiffened. No, she said, raising her voice slightly. Then she lowered her tone. No, please don't go. If you do, they'll find out. They already know, Joaquin replied. Basilio is watching me. Doña Elvira has sized me up already. Rosa swallowed hard. Then go, she insisted. Go before they catch you in the act. Joaquin shook his head. I can't, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Not after hearing this. Tomas took a step towards him. Can you get us out of here? He asked directly. Rosa pulled him back again. Tomas scolded him softly. Joaquin looked at the boy respectfully. I can't promise what I can't deliver, he said, but I can try to make sure no one treats you like you're in the way again. Rosa bit her lip. Her pride told her not to believe him, but her exhaustion told her to believe him. If you do something, she said very quietly, the first thing they'll do is take away my job. She didn't finish. Joaquin understood. The first thing is to make sure you don't depend on them, he said. The second thing is to get the truth in writing. Rosa let out a nervous laugh. In writing, she repeated. Here, the paper is signed by people with names. Joaquin looked at her intently. I have a name, he said, only I don't advertise it. Rosa looked at him suspiciously. Then why are you here? She asked. Joaquin looked down for a moment. Because sometimes you need to hide, he replied. Last night, your table was the first place where I wasn't treated like a roomer. Rosa felt a strange lump in her throat. She forced herself to harden. What you feel doesn't change my problems, she said. I know, Joaquin agreed. That's why I'm talking to you about steps. Rosa clutched the rosary and put it away again. What steps? She asked in a tired voice. One, Joaquin said. Father Julian. Two, a notary. Three, witnesses. Rosa froze. Witnesses, he repeated. Joaquin nodded. If there's going to be a wedding, someone other than the priest must know about it, he said. And if he doesn't want to say anything, he can at least confirm the details. Rosa thought. It hurt to think. Caporal Ignacio murmured, almost without meaning to. Joaquin looked up. He knows, he asked. Rosa pressed her lips together. He sees things, she said. Not everything, but he sees. Joaquin nodded as if he already had a plan. Fine, he said. I won't do anything without telling you, but I can't promise to stay quiet. Rosa looked at him with real fear. What if Doña Elvira fires you? She asked. Joaquin exhaled through his nose. She'll try, he said, but there are ways. Rosa heard footsteps outside the kitchen and tensed up. Joaquin had noticed them too. Now, Rosa whispered, go. Don't let them see you here. Joaquin made his way to the door slowly, trying not to look guilty. Before leaving, he looked at the children. Take care of your sister, he told Tomas. Tomas looked at him seriously. I always do, he replied. Joaquin nodded and left. Rosa was left with her heart pounding. She picked up Lupita briefly, as if she needed to feel her weight. Don't say anything, she told them. Don't say anything. But you were his wife, Tomas insisted quietly, as if the word was spinning around in his head. Rosa stroked his head. That doesn't change the fact that I'm your mom, she said, and you are my only responsibility. A little while later, Don Basilio appeared, as if summoned from the ground. Rosa, he exclaimed, entering without knocking. What were you doing? Rosa continued washing a dish so she wouldn't have to look at him. The same as always, he replied. Basilio looked around and the visitor asked, with feigned lightness, What are you doing? Rosa felt her stomach tighten. I don't know, she lied. I don't keep track. Basilio smiled without grace. How convenient, he muttered. I'm warning you. The lady is impatient today. Rosa squeezed the dish tightly. I work, she said. Yes, Basilio replied. But I already told you, working won't save you if they think you are insolent. Rosa swallowed hard. What does she want? Basilio asked. He leaned over slightly, but didn't touch her. Understand, he said, that the big house isn't yours, that the names aren't yours. If someone puts ideas in your head, don't cry about it later. Rosa finally looked at him with tired eyes. I've already cried all I had to cry, she said. Basilio straightened up, annoyed that he couldn't scare her anymore. We'll see, he muttered, and left. Rosa remained motionless for a moment, then moved her hands again. It was the only thing she could do without the world coming crashing down on her. That afternoon, Joaquin did not return to the kitchen. Rosa did not know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. At sunset, Carmelita entered with a tense face. Rosa whispered, They're looking for you outside. Rosa felt her back freeze. Who? Asked Carmelita. She swallowed hard. Father Julian said, Mr. Joaquin is with him. Rosa stood still. Here, she whispered. Carmelita nodded. In the backyard, she said, where no one passes by. Rosa hesitated. Each passing second felt like a ton. Tomas looked at her. Go, he said seriously. I'll take care of Lupita. Rosa looked at him as if he had suddenly grown up. All right, she whispered. She went out the back door. It was a cold afternoon, but Rosa could feel a nervous heat rising up her neck. There they were. Father Julian was a middle-aged man with a tired face and red eyes, as if he had carried guilt for too long. Joaquin stood to one side, being respectful and not approaching the priest as if he were his servant. Father Julian saw Rosa and immediately lowered his gaze. My child, he said in a hoarse voice, forgive me. Rosa was at a loss as to how to respond. Father, she murmured. Joaquin spoke first, softly. I'm not here to accuse you, he said. I'm here to ask you to do the right thing. The priest pressed his lips together. The right thing, he repeated. The right thing is not to remain silent. Rosa took a step forward. Why did you fall? She asked. Her voice came out more pained than she had expected. Father Julian looked at her and shame filled his eyes. They scared me, he confessed, because they told me it was for your own good. Because I am a man too, and I lacked courage. Rosa felt a tremor in her throat. Still, she remained firm. Did you see them? She asked. God, it was true. Father Julian nodded. I married them before God, he said bluntly. And Don Mateo wasn't joking, Rosa. It wasn't a whim. Rosa clutched the rosary in her pocket. The metal seemed to weigh heavier. Then help us, she said barely above a whisper. The priest turned to Joaquin. What are you looking for? He asked suspiciously. Because this could destroy reputations. Joaquin was not offended. I want this woman and her children to live without fear, he replied. I want what was done to be acknowledged. Father Julian swallowed hard. Doña Elvira will resist, he said. Let her resist, Joaquin replied, but let her face the truth. The priest looked at Rosa. We need the book, he said. The register. Rosa opened her eyes wide. Is it in the church? She asked. Father Julian? He shook his head. It was, he said, his voice trembling slightly. But one day it disappeared, and I pretended not to notice. Rosa felt a surge of anger. Then there's nothing, she said desperately. Joaquin intervened. You have your word, he told the priest. You have your conscience, and there's a notary who can draw up a statement. Father Julian ran a hand over his face. That puts me at odds with that house, he muttered. Father, said Rosa, her voice breaking, that house has been against me for years. You just didn't see it. The priest closed his eyes and nodded. All right, he said. I'll do it. Rosa felt something loosen inside as if someone were finally holding one end of the rope. And the notary? Asked Rosa. Joaquin raised his hand. I've already contacted him, he said. He's in town. He'll come at dawn tomorrow when there are fewer people around. Rosa swallowed hard. What if they see us? Joaquin asked. He looked at her calmly. They'll see us, he said. The difference is that you won't be alone anymore. Rosa felt that sentence shake her to her core. She didn't want to need anyone, but she also couldn't rely on pride alone anymore. The next day, before the cock crowed, Carmelita knocked softly on the kitchen door. Rosa whispered, the man is here. Rosa jumped up. The children rubbed their eyes. Where are you going? Tomas asked. Rosa bent down. I'm going to talk to someone, she said. You stay with Carmelita and don't leave. I can go, Tomas insisted. No, said Rosa. Your sister needs you here. Tomas nodded, but he looked like someone who wanted to fight the world. Rosa left, her rosary well hidden. In a small room behind the village church, the clerk waited, looking unfriendly. He was a serious man who was accustomed to listening to other people's problems without getting involved. Ma'am, he said, looking Rosa up and down, we don't come here to cry. We come here to state facts. Rosa clenched her jaw. Yes, she said, facts. Father Julian stood nervously to one side. Joaquin remained standing, not taking a seat, as if to make it clear that this place belonged to Rosa. Full name, said the clerk. Rosa swallowed and said it. Then she said the names of her children. Now, said the clerk, state the marriage, giving the date, place, and witnesses. Rosa looked at Father Julian. It was one night, she began, her voice trembling. In the village church, she continued, he said he wanted me as his wife and that he wouldn't let them call me. One more thing, said Father Julian, nodding and wiping away a tear. I married them, he confirmed, with the blessing and everything. The clerk wrote without looking up. Witnesses? Father Julian asked. She pressed her lips together. There weren't many, she said. The foreman Ignacio was outside, and Carmelita was just a little girl at the time, but she saw Don Mateo arrive. Rosa felt afraid when she heard those names spoken aloud, but they were already there. We'll bring them, Joaquin said firmly. The clerk looked up. Who are you? He asked. Joaquin didn't respond with titles, only with confidence. Someone who is responsible for what is signed here, said the clerk. He sized him up. All right, he murmured. Then you will sign, and I will attest to the statement. Rosa felt her hand tremble as she picked up the pen. She had never signed anything that could change her life before. She wrote her name in clumsy letters. Joaquin signed too, without showing any emotion. Father Julian also signed, seeming to let out a sigh of relief as he did so. When they left, Rosa took a deep breath as if she had been reborn. Joaquin walked beside her, close but not touching. This is only the beginning, he said. Rosa nodded. And now? She asked. Now, Joaquin replied, we're going to talk to Doña Elvira, but calmly without causing a scene. Rosa stopped. No, she said. She'll turn everything upside down. She'll call me a liar. Joaquin held her gaze. That's why it'll be a decent exit, he explained. I'm not coming to humiliate her. I'm coming to get her to recognize you. If she doesn't want to, then there are other ways. Rosa clutched her rosary. What avenues? Joaquin asked in a low voice. The law, he replied, and the weight of a signature. Rosa felt fear, but also something akin to hope, although she was ashamed to admit it. That afternoon at the hacienda, Doña Elvira received Joaquin in the living room as though he were paying a social visit. Rosa was not present. Joaquin insisted on speaking to Doña Elvira alone first. Doña Elvira agreed out of pride, not kindness. Rosa didn't hear everything, but Carmelita, who was passing by with a vase of flowers, overheard a few words and ran to whisper them to Rosa in the kitchen. Carmelita told her that Doña Elvira doesn't want a scandal and wants to settle things with dignity. Rosa remained silent. And what did the lady say? She asked curtly. Carmelita swallowed hard and repeated that Rosa is an employee and that she will not allow gossip. However, Rosa's face fell as if she had been hurt. Rosa clutched her apron. It hurts to have someone say it to your face, she murmured. Later, Don Basilio came in looking for a fight. What are you doing in town? He asked Rosa. Rosa felt the blow, but she was no longer the same as yesterday. Her hands trembled. Yes, she replied, looking up. I went for bread, she lied without hesitation. Basilio approached, smelling the lie. I'm warning you, he said, lowering his voice. If you think you're important because of that man, it's going to cost you dearly. Rosa clenched her teeth. It cost me more to keep quiet, she replied almost without meaning to. Basilio stood still. Wait a second. What did you say? He asked dangerously. Rosa took a deep breath. Nothing, she said, looking down. Nothing, sir. Basilio looked at her with contained rage. Then he left without saying another word, as if in a hurry to report back. That night, Joaquin returned to the kitchen, but didn't come in. He stood at the door and knocked softly. Rosa came out into the hallway, leaving the children inside. Joaquin spoke softly. I spoke to Doña Elvira, he said. Rosa felt her heart leap, and she asked, Are you strong? He replied, but she understood that I'm not here to play games. Rosa clutched the rosary in her pocket. What does she want? She asked. Joaquin looked at her calmly. She wants you to stay in your place, he said, and I told her that your place cannot be fear. Rosa exhaled, trembling. That sounds nice, she said, but she could fire me tomorrow. If she does, you'll come with me and your children to the village, Joaquin replied. I've already spoken to a family who are renting out a room. It won't be a palace, but it will be yours. Rosa froze. You would do that? She asked incredulously. Joaquin nodded. Yes, he said, and not out of pity. Rosa felt her eyes well up and forced herself to blink quickly. Then why? She asked softly. Joaquin paused for a moment, not rushing to say anything grand, just being honest. Because I saw you break bread, he said. And because when a woman like that looks you in the eye, you can't pretend she doesn't exist. Rosa swallowed hard. I don't want to be a problem, she said. Joaquin shook his head. You're not a problem, he replied. You're real, and so are your children. Rosa remained silent. The rain had returned, falling softly, barely a murmur. Lupita's voice could be heard from inside. Mom, who is it? Rosa turned towards the door, as if that simple question were a call from life itself. She turned back to Joaquin. If this goes wrong, she whispered, I won't be hurt for myself. I'll be hurt for them. Joaquin held her gaze. Let's do this right, step by step, calmly, he said. Rosa nodded very slowly as if allowing herself to lean on someone else for the first time. All right, she said, step by step. That night, when she came back in, Rosa served Tomas a piece of bread, then Lupita, and without realizing it, she served herself one too. The morning arrived without celebration, but with an underlying tension. Rosa woke the children early, dressed them as best she could, and combed their hair with trembling fingers. Today you don't leave my side, she told them firmly. Tomas nodded seriously. Like little soldiers, he murmured, trying to make her smile. Rosa gave him a quick kiss on the forehead. "How are you, children?" she asked, correcting herself, and a small smile appeared on her face. Lupita clung to her rag doll. "Are we going to town?" she asked. "First, Mum, we're going to talk," Rosa replied, not saying with whom, because saying it out loud scared her. Carmelita came into the kitchen with her eyes wide open. "Rosa," she whispered, "Mr. Joaquin is already in the living room, and so is Father Julian." Rosa felt a blow to her chest. "Here," she murmured. Carmelita nodded. "The clerk is on his way," she added, clasping her hands together. "I saw him get out of the carriage at the service entrance." Rosa looked at her children. Tomas stood up straight. "I'm not afraid," he said, although he clearly was. Rosa bent down and took their hands. "Listen to me," she said. "Whatever happens, don't hang your heads in shame. Do you hear me?" Lupita looked at her with teary eyes. "What if they say things to us?" she asked. Rosa swallowed hard. "Then they'll look at me," she replied, "and I'll answer them calmly. But no one can take your name away." Tomas squeezed his sister's hand tightly. "Yes," she said in the hallway. Don Basilio appeared as if he had sprung from the ground. He had a stern expression and a sense of urgency that wasn't related to work, but rather to control. "What are you doing with the children here so early?" Rosa asked. She took a deep breath. She wasn't going to tremble in front of him. "I'm taking them with me," she replied. Basilio sneered and smiled slightly. "Where to?" "For a walk around the big house," she replied, looking him straight in the eye. "Wherever they call me," she said. Basilio sized her up. This time his gaze was no longer triumphant, but concerned. "Are you believing things?" he muttered. Rosa didn't answer. She walked with the children towards the living room. Each step was heavy, but she didn't stop. At the living room door stood Father Julian, clutching a hat as if it were a rosary. "My child," he said when he saw her, his voice breaking. "I'm with you." Rosa felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you, Father," Joaquin murmured. He stood a few steps away, looking serious and unassuming. When he saw her with the children, he took a step towards her but stopped, not wanting to scare her. "Good morning," he said softly. Rosa looked at him for a moment, unsure what to say, and simply nodded. Doña Elvira was sitting in her usual chair at the back, as if the world belonged to her by right. She had a polished air about her, her back straight, and her fingers resting on the arm of the chair. "What a spectacle," she said, her voice quiet. Rosa felt Tomas tense up. She squeezed his hand. Joaquin spoke before Rosa could respond. "Doña Elvira," he said calmly, "I asked for this meeting to avoid scandal. Today I have come with evidence." Doña Elvira smiled coldly. "Paper," she repeated. "In this house, paper is only respected when it comes from the right person." "That's why I'm here," Joaquin said. Don Basilio stood near the door like a guard. His eyes darted restlessly between Rosa and Joaquin. "Señor Joaquin," Basilio said, "this is disrespectful. You're bringing outsiders into internal matters." Joaquin looked at him without raising his voice. "You can't decide what's internal when it comes to the lives of a mother and her two children," Doña Elvira replied. She raised a finger imperceptibly, and Basilio fell. "Fine," said Doña Elvira. "Speak, but I warn you, slander will not be tolerated here." Father Julian stepped forward. His hands were shaking, but his gaze was steady. "Doña Elvira, Mom," he began, "I have come to say something I should have said years ago." She looked at him as if undressing him with her eyes. "You have always been a prudent man," Father Julian replied. "I don't understand why you are stirring things up today." "Because today I want to make amends," replied the priest. "I married Rosa to Don Mateo." The room fell silent. A heavy silence fell. Rosa felt Lupita press herself against her skirt. Doña Elvira didn't move. She just clenched her jaw slightly. "How convenient," she said at last. "After all this time, the priest remembers." Tomas blurted out, unable to help himself. "He's not lying." Rosa pulled him gently. "Tomas," she whispered. Joaquin looked at the boy, then at Doña Elvira. "Listen to the facts," he said. "The notary is here today, too." As if he had summoned him, the notary entered, holding a folder under his arm and his hat in his hand. He had an expression of annoyance on his face as though he had seen too much drama. "Good morning," he said curtly. "Who is the interested party?" Rosa swallowed hard. "Me," she replied in a firm voice, even though she was trembling. The notary nodded. "Then I will attest to what is declared," he said, taking out paper, pen, and the document to be signed. Doña Elvira leaned back slightly. "Do you know where it is?" she asked the notary. "On a ranch," he replied without flinching, "and also in a matter that, if true, has consequences." Don Basilio took an indignant step forward. "This can't be." Joaquin cut him off with a glance. "Be quiet," he said, not raising his voice. "You've said enough." Basilio stood still. For the first time, he seemed to have lost his footing. Joaquin turned to Rosa respectfully. "Say it like you said it in the kitchen without embellishment," Rosa said. She felt her voice wanting to hide, but pulled it out by force. "I was Don Mateo's wife," she said. "Father Julian married us in the village, and when he died, I kept quiet so that my children would not be treated as if they were a disgrace." Doña Elvira let out a small laugh. "And now you don't care about your shame?" she asked venomously. Rosa looked up. "Do I care?" she replied. "But I care more about their hunger. I care more than anyone else that they're threatening to take them away from me again." Tomas pressed his lips together. Lupita wiped a tear away with the back of her hand. The clerk looked up. "Threaten?" he repeated. "Who?" Rosa hesitated. She looked at Don Basilio. He looked at her with hatred. Joaquin spoke before Rosa could back down. He said there had been insinuations of sending them to a shelter if Rosa did not obey. The clerk clicked his tongue. "That is also noted," he murmured as he wrote. Doña Elvira stood up, slightly annoyed. "You are not here to judge," she told the clerk. "I am here to attest," he replied. "And I attest to what I hear and what is declared." Father Julian took a deep breath. "I confirm it," he said. They were husband and wife. Don Mateo was in love, and Rosa was not just an affair. She was his wife. Doña Elvira clenched her fingers into fists on the arm of the chair. "And where is the record?" she asked coldly. "Without a record, there are only words." Father Julian looked down, ashamed. "The book disappeared," he confessed. Doña Elvira smiled as though this were a victory. "Then there is no proof," said Joaquin, stepping forward. His voice did not rise, yet it filled the room. "There are witnesses," he continued, "and there is a signed statement and a medal bearing initials and a date." Rosa reached into her apron and took out the rosary. The little medal glinted faintly. Doña Elvira looked at it with contempt. A flap came loose. Joaquin took a breath. Caporal Ignacio called out. The corporal entered the corridor nervously, hat in hand. He looked at Doña Elvira as one looks at a storm. "Tell the truth," Joaquin asked him gently. Ignacio swallowed. "I saw Don Mateo dismount that night," he said. "He was alone. He was carrying flowers wrapped in paper. When he returned, he seemed different, as if he had already made his choice." Doña Elvira scoffed. "Does that prove marriage?" she asked. "No," Ignacio admitted, "but it proves intention. I also noticed that later when Don Mateo fell ill, he asked about Rosa. And you didn't like that." Doña Elvira stiffened. "Be careful what you say," Ignacio murmured. He looked down but continued. "I don't tell lies, ma'am," he said. "Rosa didn't make up that story. And those children look like him." Tomas looked up, feeling both offended and proud. "My mum says we're not a nuisance," he murmured. Rosa squeezed him. "Tomas," she whispered. The clerk looked at the children intently, then continued writing. Joaquin turned to Carmelita, who was waiting at the door. "Do you remember seeing Don and Mateo go to town that night?" He asked. She turned pale and looked at Rosa as if asking for permission. Rosa nodded slightly. "Yes," Carmelita confessed. "I was a child, but I saw him. I also saw Rosa cry afterwards, but not because she was sad. She cried the way you do when you're happy and scared." Doña Elvira snorted. "Pure drama," she said. "Pure sentimentality." Joaquin didn't get upset. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Then let's talk without sentimentality," he said. Doña Elvira looked at him suspiciously. "What's that?" Joaquin held the envelope at chest height. "A letter," he replied, "with an official seal and a name you'll recognize." Don Basilio tensed up like a wire. Mr. Joaquin, he murmured, don't do anything crazy. Joaquin ignored him and looked at Doña Elvira. I came here without announcing myself, she said, because I needed discretion, but you've pushed things to the point where I can no longer remain silent. Rosa looked at him fearfully. She didn't want him to get involved any further. Joaquin turned to the notary. You asked who I am, he said. Here you go. He calmly broke the seal on a document and showed it to the notary. The notary took it, read it, and opened his eyes wide. He cleared his throat. The document began, and he looked at Joaquin with a mixture of respect and alarm. It identified the gentleman as His Highness, Prince Joaquin. The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to stand still. Doña Elvira blinked, and for the first time, her mask cracked. Prince, she repeated softly. Don Basilio took a step back, as if the floor had become a trap door. Rosa felt the world tilt. Tomas opened his mouth. Lupita stared at Joaquin as if he were a fairy tale character. Joaquin did not move. He did not relish the blow. He simply held the truth like a weight. Yes, he said simply, I'm not saying this to humiliate you. I'm saying it so you understand that if you insist on denying the obvious, it won't stay on your estate. Doña Elvira gripped her chair. You came to blackmail us, she accused. Joaquin did not respond. I came to avoid a scandal for you, for Rosa, for the children, and for myself. The notary swallowed hard. If that's the case, he murmured, this can be resolved with a formal acknowledgement and a dignified exit. Doña Elvira looked at him with contempt, but she no longer held the upper hand. What do you want? She finally asked in a low voice. Joaquin spoke clearly. He wanted Rosa and Don Mateo's union to be recognized before a notary public. He continued, the children should be recognized as the legitimate offspring of that union, and they should be given what they are entitled to without humiliation or threats. Doña Elvira clasped her hands to her temples. That tarnishes the family name, she murmured. What you did tarnishes it more, Joaquin replied, his voice steady. And you know it. Rosa felt a tremor. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted to breathe. Father Julian took a step closer. Doña Elvira, he said, if you do this right, you can preserve your dignity. If not, the truth will come out anyway, and it will be worse. Doña Elvira looked at Basilio. Basilio, looking pale, avoided her gaze. You, said Doña Elvira to Basilio venomously, you assured me that this was buried. Basilio stammered, Ma'am, I did my best. Joaquin looked at him. Your best, he said. Not theirs. The clerk adjusted his pen. Are you signing or not? He asked dryly, tired of pride. Doña Elvira remained silent. His eyes went to Rosa. For the first time, he looked at her properly, seeing her as a woman, not just an employee. Is that what you want? Doña Elvira asked softly. To hold your head high at all costs? Rosa felt the blow, but she wasn't going to back down. It's not at all costs, she replied. It's at the cost of my silence, and I've already paid too much for that. Tomas squeezed his mother's hand. I want my name, he said, his voice trembling but firm. Lupita let out a little cry. I want my mummy to eat. Rosa felt her eyes fill with tears, but she didn't cry. Doña Elvira swallowed hard. She looked tired for the first time. All right, she said as if each letter hurt her. Let it be done as the notary says, without scandal, without celebration, without gossip. Joaquin nodded. With respect, corrected Doña Elvira, clenching her jaw. But she did not fight that word. The notary placed the paper on the table. Father Julian signed. Ignacio signed his name in clumsy handwriting. Carmelita signed with a trembling hand. Rosa signed, breathing as if she were signing her own freedom. Finally, Doña Elvira signed with a perfect, cold stroke. Don Basilio tried to speak. Ma'am, Doña Elvira cut him off with a glance. You, she said, not shouting, but her voice was still loud enough to be heard. Starting today, you manage nothing. You are leaving the main wing. If you ever threaten the children again, I swear I will make it known myself. Basilio was speechless. He lowered his head. Rosa felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't triumph, it was relief. When it was all over, Doña Elvira stood up stiffly. Rosa said unkindly, You can leave now. Rosa blinked. Leave, she repeated. Yes, replied Doña Elvira. You can no longer live your life here. Rosa felt afraid, even though it was what she wanted. Fear was a habit. Joaquin intervened. She will leave when she decides, he said, but she will not leave empty-handed or in shame. Doña Elvira looked at him, clenching her jaw. Take her away, she murmured, and left without looking at the children. Rosa stood still for a moment, as if she didn't know how to move without her chains. Tomas pulled her along. Did you ask? He asked incredulously. Is it over? Rosa looked at him. It's begun, she replied. A tiny trembling laugh escaped her. In the hallway the air felt different. It was as if the house no longer had a grip on her. Joaquin walked beside her, but didn't touch her. He stopped in a corner where no one could hear them. What happened today was necessary, said Rosa. She clutched her rosary. I don't know what to do with so many confessions. They believe me. Joaquin looked at her calmly. Do what you've always done. Take care of your children. Only now, without asking permission, did Rosa look down. And you, she whispered, what are you going to do? Joaquin paused for a moment, as if his heart was speaking louder than protocol. I have to choose too, he said. Because if I leave as I arrived, this will remain a formality, and you'll be left alone with a piece of paper. Rosa looked up alertly. I don't want to owe you anything, she said. Joaquin shook his head. I don't want you to owe me, Ico, he replied. I want you to allow me. Rosa felt a pain in her chest. Allow what? She asked softly. Joaquin looked her in the eyes without rushing. Allow me to stay, he said. Properly, with a name, without hiding. Rosa swallowed, her hands trembling. You're a prince, she whispered, as if the words still didn't fit in her mouth. Joaquin exhaled through his nose. Yes, he said, and before that, I am a man who arrived soaked and found a table where love was served first to the children. Rosa felt her eyes moisten. She forced herself to breathe. That's not enough to face the world, she said. Maybe it is, Joaquin replied, if we face it together. Tomas looked at Joaquin, both suspiciously and hopefully. Together. How? He asked. Joaquin bent down to get closer to him. As a family, he replied, his tone serious. If your mum wants to. Lupita opened her eyes. Family, she repeated. Rosa felt her heart threatening to leap out of her chest. Looking at her children and Joaquin, she felt both fear and relief at the same time. Don't talk to me like that in front of them, she murmured defensively. Joaquin nodded. Okay, he said. Let's talk alone. They moved away a little. Rosa felt that if she took another step, she would fall. Rosa, Joaquin said, lowering his voice, I'm not asking you to believe me because of my title. I'm asking you to believe me because of what I've done since I walked into your kitchen. Rosa pressed her lips together. You can leave tomorrow, she said. You can get tired. You can. Joaquin interrupted her gently. I'm afraid too, he confessed. Not of Doña Elvira, but of failing you. Rosa stood still. Those words disarmed her more than any promise could. Joaquin reached into his pocket and took out a simple ring, with no large stones, as if he didn't want to dazzle her. I didn't bring it for this, he said. I brought it out of obligation to my family, out of custom. But today I bring it by choice. Rosa looked at him as if he were on fire. Joaquin, I'm not asking you to accept it now, he said quickly and respectfully. I'm asking you to listen to me. I want to marry you with your truth, your children, and your history. I want the world to know, not to show off, but to protect you. Rosa felt her legs tremble and lowered her gaze. Her whole life was screaming no, telling her that it was too much and that it wasn't for her. But then she saw Tomas's serious, tired face. She saw Lupita, clutching her doll tightly and asking for reassurance in silence. Rosa took a deep breath. I'm not a lady, she said in a low voice. Joaquin smiled slightly. I don't want you as a lady, he replied. I love you for being a mother, for being brave, and for your stubborn heart. Rosa let out a nervous laugh that turned into tears. These were not tears of defeat, but tears that cleansed something inside her. I don't know how to love beautifully, she confessed. I only know how to love by loving myself. Joaquin took a step closer and paused, waiting for permission. Then I'll learn to love you without breaking you, he said. Rosa looked at him, unable to remain harsh. What about my children? She asked as a final test. Joaquin turned towards them. Tomas watched them attentively. Lupita bit her lip. Your children are the condition, Joaquin said. Of course, not a hindrance. If you say yes to me, I'll say yes to them forever too. Tomas remained silent, weighing up the situation. Then he spoke in a small voice. Will you be angry if I don't call you Dad? Joaquin asked. Tomas blinked in surprise, his smile softening. He didn't say anything. I would be angry if they forced you to feel something. You can call me whatever you want, as long as you let me take care of them. Tomas nodded slowly. Lupita let out a shy laugh. You know how to break bread. Joaquin let out a brief laugh of relief. I'm learning, he promised. Rosa wiped her tears away with the edge of her apron, feeling both ashamed and free. I do want to, she said at last in a trembling voice, but on one condition. Joaquin became serious. Whatever it is, he said. Rosa looked up. That I'll never be ashamed to eat again, she said. That I'll never be ashamed to ask for something for my children again. And if one day you get tired of it, tell me straight. Don't be silent. Joaquin nodded firmly. I swear, he said, with my word and my name. Rosa took a deep breath. Then yes, she said. The word came out like a thread that turned into a rope. Joaquin didn't suddenly hug her. He just took her hand carefully, as if it were something sacred. Thank you, Rosa murmured, shaking her head slowly. Don't thank me, he said. Don't let go of me. Joaquin squeezed her hand gently. Never, replied Father Julian. He appeared in the hallway as if he had been waiting for that exact moment. His face wore a new peace. If you want, he said softly, I will marry you into the village today, quietly, with a blessing. Rosa froze. Today? She repeated. Joaquin smiled. Today, he confirmed, if you want. Rosa looked at her children. Tomas opened his eyes nervously. Are we going to church? Asked Lupita, squeezing her rag doll. Can I take her? She asked. Rosa let out a wet laugh. Yes, she said. You can take her. Hours later in the village church, there was no grand music or luxurious flowers. There were just simple people, Carmelita, the foreman, Ignacio, and two women from the market who had seen Rosa buying bread with her few coins. There was also a calmness that Rosa had never experienced in a church before, the calmness of not being hidden. Father Julian spoke in a firm voice. We are here, he said, so that truth may have a home and love may have a name. Rosa stood next to Joaquin. Her hands were shaking. Joaquin looked at her as if the world were in no hurry. Tomas and Lupita stood to one side. Tomas looked serious, trying not to cry. Lupita's eyes were wide. Father, said the priest, do you accept Joaquin as your husband, to walk with him in respect and fidelity? Rosa swallowed hard. Yes, she replied. It was a word that did not ask for permission. Joaquin, said the priest, do you accept Rosa as your wife, with her children and her history, to care for her and honor her? Joaquin did not hesitate. Yes, he said with all his heart. Father Julian smiled slightly, as if he had finally forgiven himself. Then he said, before God and these witnesses, you are now united. Joaquin took the simple ring and calmly placed it on Rosa's finger. Rosa felt the metal closing the wound in her heart. With trembling hands, Rosa placed her ring on Joaquin's finger. The ring was not expensive. It was a visible promise. Father Julian raised his hand. You may kiss, he said simply. Rosa blushed but didn't hide it. Joaquin leaned in slowly, asking with his eyes. Rosa nodded slightly. It was a brief, respectful kiss, and yet Rosa felt the world shifting. Tomas quickly wiped away a tear, angry with himself. I didn't cry, he muttered. Lupita tugged at Rosa's dress. Is it really true? She asked. Rosa bent down and hugged at her. Yes, she replied. It's true. As they left, Father Julian handed them a stamped document. The notary confirmed it, and the foreman Ignacio crossed himself as if he were finally witnessing justice being served. In the afternoon, back in the hacienda kitchen for the last time, Rosa asked to come in for a moment, not to beg, but to say goodbye. Doña Elvira did not appear. She had only left a message with a maid. Let her leave quietly. Rosa looked around the kitchen, the griddle, the table, the corner where the children used to hide. She swallowed hard. Tomas looked at her. "Does it hurt?" he asked. Rosa breathed. "It hurt before," she said. "Today, I just remember." Joaquin came in, carrying a basket, and left it on the table. "For the road," he said. Rosa opened the basket. There was bread, enough bread. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from habit. Lupita climbed onto the bench. "Now you can eat, Mom," she said. Rosa fell silent for a moment, then broke off a piece of bread as usual. But this time she did something different. She gave one piece to Tomas and another to Lupita, keeping one for herself. She looked at the bread for a moment, as if it were a new permission. Joaquin didn't speak. He just looked at her tenderly, and that was enough. Rosa bit into the bread and didn't feel guilty. Tomas saw her and finally smiled. "That's right," he said proudly. Rosa swallowed and let out a little laugh that came from deep within her. "That's right," she repeated. Joaquin took another piece. "Will you teach me how to break it properly?" he asked playfully. Rosa looked at him sideways. "You don't even know how to break bread," she said. For the first time, her tone sounded like a joke. Joaquin put his hand to his chest, pretending to be offended. "That's a lie," he said. "Look," he broke the bread crookedly. Lupita giggled. "It came out crooked," she accused him. Joaquin leaned towards her. "I did it to make you laugh," he said. Lupita covered her mouth, laughing. Rosa looked at the three of them and felt something she had never fully allowed herself to feel before. Peace. Joaquin took Rosa's hand. "Let's go," he said. "Your house is waiting for us." Rosa looked up. "What house?" she asked, still incredulous. Joaquin smiled. "The one we built," he replied. "Not with walls, but with respect." Rosa nodded. She picked up her backpack and her children. As they crossed the courtyard, some employees looked at them in surprise, while others looked at them with envy. Rosa did not lower her head, not out of pride, but because she no longer had to bear the shame of others. Tomas walked straighter. Lupita counted her steps, clutching her rag doll. In the carriage, already far from the estate, Rosa looked at Joaquin. "I thought my life was going to be pure obedience," she confessed softly. "I thought my reward was that they let us exist." Joaquin calmly took her hand again. "Your reward," he said, "is to live without asking permission to be loved." Rosa swallowed. She looked at him as if she wanted to engrave the words in her memory. "What if the world looks at us badly?" Joaquin asked. He smiled slightly. "Let them look," she replied. "We'll look them straight in the eye." Tomas leaned tiredly yet peacefully on his mother's shoulder. "Mother," he murmured, half asleep, "I do want my name." Rosa stroked his hair. "You already have it," she said. Lupita yawned. "And I want bread tomorrow," she said, speaking with the perfect logic of a child. Rosa laughed. "You'll have it," she promised. Joaquin looked at Rosa with a look that demanded nothing. "Rosa," he said softly, "thank you for opening that door that night." Rosa took a deep breath. "I just did what I do," she replied. "Take care." Joaquin squeezed her hand and said, "I'll do what I have to do now. Stay." Rosa closed her eyes for a moment, not to avoid hearing, but to feel it. When she opened them, she looked at him fearlessly. "Then stay," she said. "But really stay." Joaquin smiled. "Really," he replied. And so with a loaf of bread shared without guilt, two children who were no longer hiding, and a love that didn't need to shout to be strong, Rosa understood something simple. No one is born to live in humiliation. When the heart finds respect, it also finds a home. Thank you very much for listening to this story from beginning to end. We hope it moved you as much as telling it moved us. We would love to hear your opinion. Leave us a comment telling us where you are listening from and what you liked most. Rate this story from 1 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel and like it to show your support. This motivates us to keep creating and sharing more emotional and educational stories. Before we say goodbye, we'd like to remind you that a recommendation for another exciting and charming story will appear on the final screen. If you would like to watch it, simply click on the video. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.